Good afternoon. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission Advisory Review Panel convened to review the FY22 Arts Organization Support Grant Program applications for Region 7. I am Maya Michelson, Deputy Director of the Indiana Arts Commission. Today is Wednesday, April 28th, 2021, and we are meeting online and streaming live for applicants and the public to observe. There is to be no contact between the panel and the audience about the disposition of applications before, during, or after the panel meeting. This meeting will be recorded and made available upon request. So now at this time, I will individually invite each of the panelists and then the staff to introduce themselves. Panelists will state their name, occupation, where they are from the state, and staff will state their title and role. So let's start first with the panel. I will start by introducing each of you by your first name so that you can share a little more about yourself. Christine Johnson.
Hi everyone, I'm Christine Johnson. Happy to be here today. I am a benefits analyst for Full Beauty Brands, and this is my second review panel, and it's good to be here today. I'm from Wanamaker, Indiana, so she said that.
Thanks, Christine. Erin Williams.
Hi, I'm Erin Williams. I am the Executive Director for the Muncie Arts and Culture Council, and I'm up here in Muncie in Delaware County.
Thanks, Erin. Angelia Moore.
Good afternoon. I'm Angie Moore. I serve as Vice President of Edna Martin Christian Center. I'm here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm glad to be with you today.
Thanks, Angie. Hannah Reffett.
Hi, my name is Hannah Reffett, and I am a graduate student at Indiana University getting my master's in arts administration, and I'm from Crawfordsville, Indiana.
Great. Welcome and thanks to all of our panelists. Now let's move on to staff. Staff, if you would, please provide your name, title, and your role here today. And I will start with Stephanie Haynes.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Haynes, Arts Education and Accessibility Program Manager at the Indiana Arts Commission, and I am the Grants Manager for Region 7 Central Indiana Grants.
Next is Victoria Hadrick.
Hi, I'm Victoria Hadrick. I'm Communication and Programs Intern at Indiana Arts Commission, and I will just be observing and following along as well.
Thanks, Victoria. And last but not least, our tech whiz on today's panel, Chapman Schnick.
Hey there, I'm the Contracts, Operations, and IT Assistant for the Arts Commission, and I'm here in tech role.
Thanks, staff. At this time, I'm going to ask back Stephanie Haynes from the IAC to say a few words about this year.
Thanks, Maya. So before the panel review begins, I want to share a few words on behalf of the Indiana Arts Commission. First and foremost, I want to thank the panelists for sharing your time and expertise. You have done a lot of work in this process, including participating in specialized training to prepare for this work, which this year includes how to reduce implicit bias in the review process. And you've, of course, spent many hours reviewing these applications, lending your expertise to assure a high-quality process. So thank you. To all here and those listening in, we want to say a few words about why this year's panel process is different. We've been very clear from the beginning of this upcoming grant cycle in our guidelines, in our application and training, that our focus would be on what's most important right now. And that is to responsibly support our arts organizations at this critical time. And for this grant cycle, that means supporting organizations that demonstrate they are operating and will continue to operate during the fiscal year 22 grant period. As a result of these changes, you may hear very little dialogue or feedback on an application. That in no way reflects a lack of dedication to a thorough evaluation process. It is merely a reflection of this unique time and unique process. Again, thank you for all you do for the arts in Indiana. Back to you, Maya.
Thanks, Stephanie. Now we'll begin the panel review. So for those of you that are watching live on YouTube or that may be watching at some point in the future, I'm going to explain a little bit about how the process will work. The review panel will first review the application pool for operating support, and then they will move on to merit award consideration. And each of these two processes will be distinctly different. In both cases, if a panelist has a conflict of interest, they will be placed on hold while that application is reviewed. But luckily for us, we have no conflicts of interest on this panel, so it won't be necessary to do that in this round. So first, let me talk a little bit about what the review process looks like for operating support. In this process, panelists will be coming to consensus. They will use a summary sheet that has the results of their individual pre-panel assessments, in other words, assessments that they did before they arrived at the panel today, of each applicant's organizational resiliency. They will come to consensus for each application and make one of the following recommendations to the Indiana Arts Commission. Yes, which means recommending funding the application as is. No, do not recommend funding the application. Or yes, recommend funding the application with required modifications. The panel will actually determine the required modifications. IAC and partners will follow up with the applicants after the panel is concluded to collect information to ensure that panelists' concerns are addressed. Once a decision has been made for each application, the staff will record the recommendation. Once the review for operating support is complete, we'll move on to the merit process, or if needed, we'll take a break. The merit review will consist of those applicants that elected to submit for merit consideration and whose average score ranked in the top 10 from the pre-assessment done by all panelists. Those applicants were each assigned a reader, and today the panel will use the reader process to discuss those qualifying merit applications. Each reader will provide their assessment of the application's merit based on the merit evaluation criteria. Panelists, please note there's no need to provide a total recap of what was submitted since everyone has read it, but please do provide your comments specifically related to merit. After the reader is finished, we'll open the discussion up for any additional comments. In the interest of time, what we're really looking for are new, additional, or differing viewpoints than what was presented. Once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we'll ask the panel to update their scores in the online system, and it's not unusual for scores to change as a result of the broader discussion. The scores save automatically in our online grant system. So, are there any questions? I have to look over to my other monitor to see if I see any other questions, and it looks like we are good to go. All right, so now let's begin. On screen is the list of applications that will be reviewed today, and they are in alphabetical order. So, to begin our review for operating support, panelists, I'm going to ask you to draw your attention to the resiliency assessment summary sheet. We'll start our review in batches where there's consensus. Panelists, I'm asking you to divert your attention to the rows in green on your summary sheet. Those are applications where you have come to consensus to recommend those applications for funding. So take a moment, if you would, to review those list of applicants one more time. Are there any concerns about recommending any of these applications for funding? I'm looking to see, okay, I see heads shaking as in they are in consensus to continue. I hear no concerns. So hearing no concerns or seeing no concerns, does the panel agree to recommend these applications for funding? So a yes is a thumbs up, either a digital thumb or an actual thumb. So I will check and make sure I see thumbs. Awesome. And now I'm going to read those applicants that are by consensus recommended for funding. And they are Big Car Collaborative, Kids Dance Outreach Incorporated, Museum of Miniature Houses and Other Collections Incorporated, Philharmonic Orchestra of Indianapolis, Shelby County Players Incorporated, Storytelling Arts of Indiana, Sullivan Muntz Cultural Center, and Summer Stock Stage Incorporated. Just to reiterate, these applicants have been recommended for funding by consensus by the panel. All right, good job. We've gotten through the first part of the process. So nice work. Now we're going to look at applications where there is some we don't quite have consensus. Maybe for one application, a couple of you said yes, and one suggested yes with modifications, or maybe someone said no. We are going to go applicant by applicant and talk through those, and again, hopefully come to consensus. And again, if there are recommended modifications that the panel can come to consensus on, then we will record that as the panel's view. So want to start first with Arts Council of Indianapolis. We're not in consensus there for funding, so I'm going to open the floor up for thoughts related to the Arts Council of Indianapolis.
So hi everyone, it's Christine. And my concern with this application, besides all of the other stellar work that this organization has done, was with the continued projected deficit. What I would have liked to see from the application is a little bit more information about how they are planning to make up that deficit. They were very specific in the application, which I appreciated, with how they cut expenses and with the funding they received through the CARES Act and the PPP. And they did know that they lost significant income from private event rentals through the Circle City Center. And I would like to just have more information about whether they think that those rental income will be coming back up in the next year or two. And if that's not the case, how do they anticipate making up those funds?
Hey, thank you, Christine. So what I'm hearing so far is a recommendation for some additional information or planning related to how they're going to address the deficit. Other thoughts related to this first applicant?
Hi, this is Angie. I love the work that they've done and the detail that they put in about the work that they're doing, but also had concerns around the deficit and how they're going to shore up that deficit to make sure that they can sustain programming.
Right. Thank you, Angie. So hearing no other discussion or comments, could the panelists come to agreement that you'd like to recommend to the IAC that they receive some additional information related to planning related to the deficit? That was a clumsily written, phrased modification, but are we comfortable with that? Stephanie Haynes, is that enough information for you? Okay. If everyone's comfortable with that, if you would indicate with either a thumbs up, or I see a thumbs up from Hannah, thank you, from Aaron, Angie, and Christine. All right, thank you. All right, we're good. So for the record, Arts Council of Indianapolis is a yes with required modifications. So thank you for that discussion. So next we'll move on to Asante Children's Theater. This application also had some suggested yes with modifications. So I will open the floor up to anyone who might have comments about what sort of modification, what they saw in their review, and what sort of modifications they might suggest for this applicant.
And I need just a minute to pull up the next application.
Oh, sorry, Stephanie, you
2
told me
seconds.
to. Yeah, good. You told me to do that, and then I forgot. So. Stephanie, are you good? Okay. Okay, now we have Asante up so that Stephanie can monitor the conversation while we're talking. Thoughts about Asante Children's Theater? Again, we had a couple of yes withs here, so want to give those folks that might have wanted to see some additional modifications an opportunity to share what you saw in the application. Any comments?
So this is Angie. Again, another very strong application. The work that they do is astounding, and there was a lot of information on how they're separating the work out and increasing their availability. And they did notate that they have not filed their IRS 990, which is a concern. So once I know that the council has received the reporting of the IRS 990, I would be in support.
Right. Thank you. So we have a recommendation for confirmation that they have submitted all required federal filing requirements as a modification, a yes with. Other thoughts? Additional modifications? Any additional information that you would recommend that the IEC gather from this applicant? All right, well then, hearing none, we will, or I will restate that the panel is in affirmation to fund this applicant pending the modification of confirming federal filing requirements from the IRS. If you are in agreement with that, if you would please indicate with a thumbs up. All right, great, thank you. All right, good. All right, we're good there. That was Asante. Stephanie, why don't you let me know when you've got the next one up and I will move on so I don't get ahead of you. You guys are doing great, by the way. This is a different process for us and we are learning alongside you, so thank you. Okay, the next applicant we will look at is the Indianapolis Youth Orchestra. We did have a yes with amongst our panelists, so I want to open the floor for discussion about what you would recommend that the Arts Commission, oh my goodness, what time is it? Request as additional modification to this application.
This is Erin. Make sure I got my mute off there. Oh my gosh. The only flag that I had about this application was that they had to suspend their educational program. And per their budget, it looks like that's a pretty significant part of their annual income. So I was wondering what their plan was for restarting their educational program since it did take a hit this year. And it's only a concern of mine because they seem to operate without a lot of income each year from year to year. So will the loss in this year affect them next year? So I think an updated balance sheet could help to see how they've leveraged some of their assets from last year or from the next year for the next fiscal year.
Great, thank you, Erin. So what I'm hearing is a modification of an updated balance sheet.
Yeah, I think an updated balance sheet and then maybe just a little bit more clarity or detail on their organizational survival plan.
Okay.
As it relates to the classes that they offer and their income in that area.
Okay. So a plan that addresses how they're going to manage related to their most significant source of income, as well as a balance sheet. Yeah, thank you. Other comments? All right, well, hearing none, we'll put forth the recommended modification of an updated balance sheet and then more specific information related to how they a financial survival plan taking into account their most significant source of income. Does that seem reasonable? If so, could you indicate with a thumbs up? Stephanie Haynes, is that okay? Good information. Okay, great, awesome.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So that is the Indianapolis Youth Orchestra. So we'll take a moment here for Stephanie Haynes to catch up in the system. Sorry, we need to get the next application queued up, and sometimes it takes just a second. So hang with us. All right, we're good now. All right, our next applicant is the Partnerships for Lawrence Incorporated, doing business as Arts for Lawrence. We have a yes with recommendation from a panelist. So would love to open the floor and have folks discuss what you might recommend modification wise for this applicant.
Hi, this is Angie. Again, a strong proposal. The work that they were doing was previously halted, and they were ready to gear up and start rolling when the pandemic hit. And so based on that and their loss of income for 2020, again, there's concerns around how they'll make up those deficits and be able to support ongoing the work that they plan to do.
So Angie, in this case, do you think an updated or maybe a written plan that addresses that as well as financials, or do you think the plan itself would be enough?
The plan should be able to show the work that they plan to do to offset those deficits.
Okay. So a written plan to address the deficits. Other panelists, additional thoughts, comments on the proposed recommended modification? And you guys are in such alignment. Goodness, it's great. All right, so if everyone is comfortable with funding this organization with the required modification of submitting a plan to address deficit, please indicate by putting a thumb up. Whatever kind that you'd like. Great, thank you. Okay, we're good. All right, give Stephanie a second to record that, and then we'll move on to the next applicant. Okay, next application is the Society for Preservation, Encouragement of Barbershop Quartet Singing, American F002, Greater Indianapolis, or DBA, Circle City Sound. This applicant also had a yes with from a panelist, so I'd like to open the floor for comments related to this application and what required modifications the panel would like to ask or recommend.
Again, this is Angie. I wanted to have, I truly enjoyed their ability to do the work that they have outlined, and the initiative they've taken to stay active during the pandemic, but again, had some concerns around their financials, and if we could get an updated financial review, if the staff could review the financial review and their cash on hand versus their expenses, and also how do they sure up that they'll be able to survive moving forward financially.
Mm-hmm.
and they've shown a great deal of initiative on their own by reducing their budget by 17%, but there's still some work to be done.
Right, thank you, Angie. So it sounds like what you'd be proposing would be not only seeing updated balance sheet, but then also some sort of written plan that addresses financial sustainability going forward.
Or if IAC can look at it and see if they see something that shows that they are ready, then that's fine.
Great, thank you. Other panelists, anything you would add to that? So essentially what Angie is recommending is staff take a look at updated financials and review financial viability and sustainability and make the determination. But there are some concerns related to that going forward. Stephanie Haynes, is that, you captured that? Okay. If that is agreeable to all, if you would indicate by putting a thumb up so we know we're good. Great, thank you. All right. All right, and that was Circle City Sound. So Stephanie, I'll let you get queued up with the next one. Okay, our next applicant is Storefront Theater of Indianapolis. And we also had a yes with indication from a panelist for this applicant. So I'm once again opening the floor for folks who had comments or suggestions or recommended modifications for this applicant, Storefront Theater of Indianapolis.
Well, this is Erin. So this might not be an actual issue, but I just wanted to kind of bring it up to have it just on the radar. It's a very small organization that's doing, a large amount of work. They're doing a great job. But one flag I had is that they are currently renting their building, it appears, on their financials, and that they also looks like applied for an EIDL loan that they will have to repay. So I was a little unsure based on their financials what that EIDL loan amount was for and whether they're going to be in a good position to be able to repay that. And they also said that they used some of their ACDMO funding towards ventilation in the building, but the building's a rental. So I was a little bit concerned about kind of the longevity of that project as far as, is it planning to stay in the same location for a large enough amount of time that a renovation to a building that you don't own is a good idea. So I think that it's doing great work, and this is probably all things that they have sorted out and figured out, but just a little bit more information about kind of what they're planning in these areas. The other thing that I noted was that along with some of these other kind of uses of funding, they also changed the way that they ticket, and they've decided to reduce their $25 normal ticket rate to be kind of a as you can pay donation, was how I understood it. And if that's also a new change in these times where we're a little bit unclear about what our financials are going to be, and I understand that they did that to be a little bit more equitable, which is really great. But I wonder how that's going to affect their financials kind of moving forward, and if they have a plan to make up the remainder of what they might not be making in donations, or maybe that will shake out to give them more money than they would have gotten in ticket sales. So those were the three kind of big things that I flagged, and all of which I think they probably can explain maybe with just a little bit of narrative about what they're doing to ensure survival. I also noted, just what they're doing to assess and address their financial situation, since they are a young, small company so far. And that it could be helpful for the staff to review the financials. I don't know. I'll let the staff decide if they think that that's warranted or not. But and then there was also a note I made that they, I think, went over budget on their payroll this last year. I could be wrong about that, but that was a note that I made. So it could be good to just check in with them about their staffing to make sure that they're not, they've planned correctly so that they can, have payroll and then meet it without going over if they're not overextended.
That's great, Erin. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Additional comments, and then we'll craft this into a modification recommendation. Any additional comments related to Storefront? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to try to put this into a single modification recommendation, Erin. So maybe you'll help me. But what I think I heard was recommendation that staff review financials overall with particular attention related to the status of the facility on the short and long term, the status of the staff and ongoing staffing, and then also the potential impact of a change in ticket pricing policy. That those were sort of those were the primary areas that I heard of most concern. Does that capture it, Erin?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
the only other thing, and I don't know how this applies directly, but it may not, is the EIDL, because I know that that's a different sort of loan than the paycheck. So.
Yep, good point. Yeah, and that certainly is that would be part of the financials. So we're talking financials as it relates to EIDL, loan repayment, facility and longevity and facility, staffing and staffing pressures, and then a change in ticket pricing policy and the impact that has on the organization. So does that sound reasonable for the rest of the panel? And if so, if you would just indicate with a thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you. Stephanie Haynes, did you get that?
I think so. Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Awesome. We do have the recording because just in case we need to go back. So thank you. Great discussion. I appreciate that very much. So that was Storefront Theater of Indianapolis Incorporated. Stephanie, let me know when you're ready to move on to the next one. Okay, next applicant is the Summit Performance Indianapolis Incorporated. And we did, again, have a yes with indication for your preliminary review of this application. So I'll just open the floor again for thoughts from panelists about what you saw and recommendations you'd make for some modifications you would recommend the IAC consider.
All right, this was also me. There we go again. Sorry, everyone. No, I think that this group is also doing really great work, and I was excited to review this application. I was a little unsure about the fact that they were one of the only organizations that went into furlough, and so that was a little bit of a red flag for me because they also indicated that they did not have a large number of board meetings or different COVID-related planning in place. So those three things together, I thought could use maybe just a short discussion about kind of what their plans and intentions are when they do have sort of some adversity planning, possibly. More information about what they're doing to ensure survival. The other thing I noted here is, so they had their see if I can explain this. Their fiscal year, it looks like it runs from, it was an off time point. It was like a September to September. Yeah. Fiscal year is like a September to October. And I thought it was odd that they showed such a drastic loss in the COVID kind of pandemic year of 2020, but that actually would have been possibly offset a bit by 2019 if they are actually having their fiscal year change in September. So that just seemed a little odd to me. You would, I guess, just glancing at that, I would expect to see 2 fiscal years that are more aligned. They were a difference of looks like almost $40,000 in what they have reduced their income by 50%. So possibly that is just a planning issue, or because that they did do the furlough, maybe they saved money on salary that then they can apply later. But I thought that was a little bit of a red flag that I would just encourage the IUC to look into that. I'm just checking my notes here. I just wrote, I'd like to know more about what they have planned for next year, how they would make up the revenue loss of like $40,000 since they're a pretty small company. And it seems like they're coming from areas like grant funding was one of the line items that had the loss. It wasn't in tickets necessarily. So that was another area that maybe a little concerned that they're changing their more stable funding sources, and so how they're going to make that up in the future as well. So it could be that maybe looking at some financials from before 2019 and 20 could be helpful to see sort of how their flow is generally from year to year, because it was really hard to tell then because of the September fiscal year where kind of this one kind of off 2020 year falls in sort of their general funding scope, if that makes sense.
It does. Any other comments related to this applicant? And then we'll put this into a set of recommended modifications. Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to take a shot at this. And Erin, if I don't quite get there, help me out.
Sure.
Sounds like to me what I'm hearing proposed is a review of the previous financials of the organization, along with an update on current financials for the organization, as well as sounds like more evidence of financial sustainability or planning, or not just financial, but organizational sustainability planning. It sounds like to me that you didn't see much evidence of that, and that that in particular, the fact that there was a furlough and not many board meetings, that indicated that maybe they had not been, that they had not put together a plan for how to move forward, sort of post-pandemic. And then obviously there are concerns related to lost income that weren't necessarily addressed in the application. Is that fairly, what am I missing?
Yeah, that's pretty pretty good. So
it sounds like almost a not fairly detailed, but a sort of a comprehensive check-in related to the areas of finance, staffing, planning, is warranted for this organization. Is that sort of?
Yeah, I think, what it could be that maybe they have, whoever does their grant writing was, the person that took the break, the furlough, and so they weren't working, and so grants weren't written this last year, and that's just what it was. So it could be that simple, but I think just clarifying sort of why that happened and what the plan could be for the future to be a little bit more sustainable, I think would be helpful for the organization.
Right, thank you. If the rest of the panelists are in agreement, if you just indicate with a thumbs up or a digital thumbs up. Looks like everybody's good. Stephanie Haynes, did you capture that? Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, we'll give Stephanie a second to catch up, get to our next applicant. We've got 3 more under resiliency funding, and then I think we'll take a break before we move on to merit, because I need another Diet Dr. Pepper. So I got enough left for about 3 more grants, and then I'm going to have to refuel.
When did you switch to Dr. Pepper?
Well, I will tell you, it's way more information than anybody needs, but in a can, it's my go-to. In a fountain drink, it's Diet Coke, but in a can, Diet Dr. Pepper is my go-to. Way too much information to share in a grant panel, but you know, here we are.
No.
Yeah. Are we good? All right. So the next, our next application is the Bigger Picture Film Group, and we had a couple of panelists indicate yes with modifications might be appropriate here. So I'm just going to open the floor for discussion related to the Bigger Picture Film Group and their application.
Hi, this is Hannah, and yeah, though Bigger Picture demonstrated a commitment towards maintaining resiliency, I would have liked to have seen a more thorough, detailed plan as to how they plan for making up the losses that they've sustained during the pandemic. And so that was my biggest recommendation that I would like to see.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hannah. Other thoughts, comments, responses to Bigger Picture Film Group?
I had the same comments,
Okay.
so.
Thank you, Erin.
Oh, I also noted they don't have a balance sheet, unless I missed something. So that could be something to request from them.
Great. So to put this in a recommended modification, an updated balance sheet, assuming one doesn't exist or wasn't submitted, and then a more detailed recovery plan provided by Bigger Picture. If that sounds like the group's recommendations, if you would indicate that by a thumbs up. Right. Thanks all. All right, Stephanie Haynes, let us know when you're ready to move on. Okay, our next applicant is Children's Ballet, and we had panelists who indicated a yes with for this application. So I'll open the floor and would love to hear panelists' comments and suggestions related to modifications they'd like to see for this applicant.
This was another one that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more detail on what their plan is for organizational survival. It's a young organization, so that was also an additional concern for me in their resiliency. And yeah, just a lack of pandemic planning was also a concern that I would like to see a little bit more detail on.
Great, thank you, Hannah.
This is Christine, and I shared Hannah's concerns. They mentioned the live stream Nutcracker, but didn't mention how what COVID precautions were taken during that event. I do appreciate that they did, take time to create virtual classes and content and kept fees low to make the classes accessible as possible. Just more information on the application overall. What kind of programming did they offer? They mentioned surveys, but they didn't mention who they surveyed or what the information was that they gained from the surveys or how they used that information. Did they have additional underserved groups that were reached because their content was virtual? That would have been great to know as well.
Great.
I had a few other things just that I noted. One thing they said was that they had utilized some funding that was allocated for their building, either building a new building or taking care of their building, and they allocated that to their general fund to help cover some loss. And I was curious how they were going to navigate that in the future, if they're going to rebuild their building fund, or have they changed their plan for what they want to do there? The other thing here I noted was they also indicated that they had received loans, and I think it was EIDL and maybe something else as well. And again, that's not super clear in their financials, so I just wanted to make sure the IC could double check and make sure that that's, that they're going to be able to repay loans at that level. And they also had, they have a fiscal year that ends on 6/30, but their estimated financials were just mirroring what their budget was. So I think updated financials for this year would be helpful.
Great. So what I heard, and I will just list them out, heard the need to take a look at a more detailed resiliency plan from an operational / programming side, as well as from financial side. More detail on how they were serving underserved groups. The assumption is it's probably happening, but not enough sense of what that looked like. Concern around the building fund and the tapping into the building fund and what were plans to build that back, presumably. A little more information related to loan repayment wasn't reflected in the financials, so some concern there related to their ability to repay loans. And then just an overall update of the financials closer to their fiscal year end. Did I capture? Great. Awesome. All right, if you're good with that, good with those recommended modifications. Stephanie, did you get those? All right, if you're good, then if you would indicate with a thumbs up. I've already seen a couple of thumbs, so I think everybody's good. Awesome, thank you. All right, the last resiliency funding recommendation discussion we'll have before we take a break is the Da Vinci pursuit, but we'll let Stephanie Haynes get herself ready for that discussion if you want to put your notes up. So Stephanie, let us know when you're ready for that discussion. Okay, our last applicant under the resiliency funding discussion is the Da Vinci pursuit. Had some yes with recommendations here or comments here, so I'll open the floor up to the panel to discuss what you might recommend this applicant provide to the IEC, modifications that you would recommend for this applicant.
Hi, this is Christine. I'll kick us off. I think the author of the grant was very passionate about this organization and their mission, which I appreciate. I was kind of questioning what this organization actually does and what their programming actually is. I loved the idea of the museum without walls, recognizing that lowering barriers to learning by taking arts to where people live and work to create a stronger sense of place is a great thing. I would have loved to hear some examples of what happens on these walks and what kind of activities take place to help people build that sense of place. They also talked about how they increased contact, but they didn't say, again, to whom or to what end. So again, that further detail would be great. And again, the online programs, I wasn't clear about what they actually were, if they were digitally walking people through communities and doing these museums without walls, or was it some other type of programming that they were offering. So just generally more information about their programming and how they were making that happen through COVID and all that COVID stuff that we've been looking at today.
Great, thanks, Christine. Other comments? Suggested modifications for the Da Vinci Pursuit.
I made a note here. One of the things I kind of felt like when I was reading this application was that maybe, this was a hard year for them to do an application because it wasn't the normal IAC version. It was an abbreviated version. It just seemed like there was a lot of missing information that like Christine mentioned, is just normally maybe available in the application and just was not available here.
Okay.
I was a little bit concerned. So I don't know if maybe I don't know what that translates to, but maybe there's a way for them to just flesh out an application and it would just have more information in there that they could, more space for them to work. But the financials were a little bit messy. And so I would encourage them to maybe evaluate maybe some of their financial procedures so that they are able to put together financials that will be useful for this sort of application. They had some different formatting, putting their budgets in quarters. It was hard for me to see whether they had actually included all of the information was required. So it looks like they have like a year to date, but it's only 1 week of January that's listed. So I would just encourage them to be careful of that, and then have the IAC just check some of the figures that they have here.
Thank you, Erin. Any other suggested modifications? And then I'll try to put a bow on this. All right. So what I heard is maybe some the group would like to recommend them providing more detail related to programming, exactly what happened, what activities happened in person, what activities happened online, just some more detail there. More detail and information on who they actually served, either in person or online, over the period. And then up-to-date financials. I heard some discussion about formatting of financials, maybe up-to-date balance sheet and profit and loss statement to help staff get a sense of their current financial position. Does that seem reasonable? Anything anybody would add to that? Stephanie Haynes? We got it for you? Okay, awesome. All right, if everyone's good with that, please indicate with a thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you all. All right, so we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Let's make it 6 so that we're back at 3 o'clock. So everyone take 6, grab something to drink, stretch your legs, and then we will move on to the merit narrative review. Okay, good job all, and we will see you back at 3 o'clock sharp. Thank you. Chapin, are you back?
I am indeed. I was waiting to see everybody else return as well. Looks like we're only missing 2 at the moment.
Okay, fantastic.
We don't have your video, Maya.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here.
That was my fault. I turned it off while
okay.
I'll ask to restart. Just so that you,
Yeah. No, that's good because I have this because I got to roll with seeing my written information. So the Zoom screen is very tiny. So thank you for doing that.
okay. Yeah, that was my fault. It was so that your video wasn't showing during our break.
Yeah, I wouldn't see my beautiful chair. All right. So are we all back?
You're waiting for Hannah.
Got it. Thank you.
There she is. Okay.
And it looks like we're back. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue this AOS Region 7 grant review. Now we're going to start the merit award consideration. Just as a quick reminder to those of us who are observing today, this is a different process. In this process, unlike the last one, panelists will provide their assessment of the qualifying application's merit award submission. And then we'll take a moment for some discussion, and then the panelists will have an opportunity to update their scores based on the discussion. So I would now ask panelists to refer to the merit award consideration list. Does everybody have that available to them? I'm looking to see if anyone needs some assistance. I think everybody's good. Thank you. So we'll start at the top of the list. And so we're going to start with the Arts Council of Indianapolis, and the reader for that merit narrative is Christine Johnson. So Christine, if you would.
Thank you. So I was really impressed with all the work that this organization did this year, not only for its own programming, but in assisting just the arts community in surviving and helping them to forward, each one of their own missions. They actually rolled out a program called Indie Keeps Creating, which kind of reminded people all the good things that artists do in the community that maybe we needed to be reminded about. I thought that was a really creative program and something that we all needed, especially during this past year when we were all confined to our chairs in our offices, or most of us. I actually attended one of the monthly sessions for arts leaders, and I found that extremely helpful. And it was good to see that those sessions were well attended. I think the organization really helped bolster the arts community in a time of probably the greatest need that we've seen in a long, long time. So I definitely have no issues with recommending a merit award for this organization.
Thank you, Christine. So I'll open the floor up. If folks have other comments,
I'll note one thing that we're going to try not to bring outside information, like going to their meeting would be an outside information to the discussion, but the rest of your review was spot on. Thank you, Christine.
The only
Thank
thing
you. Yeah. Go ahead, Erin.
Sorry. I totally agree with Christine. I thought that their presentation of the work that they've been able to do this year was really very impressive. The only place that I was maybe a little bit unclear was their direct relationship to underserved communities and what kind of is an underserved community. And it actually made me wonder, are artists actually just underserved communities? Because maybe we are. But if artists do not fall into different ethnic and cultural backgrounds, does that still count? So I think they do that work inherently when they work with everything that they do. But it was not really clear whether there was a direct relationship there.
Thanks, Erin. Other comments? All right, hearing none. Good discussion. Take a second, finalize your scores, and update any online comments you have made in the online system. I'll give you a minute or two. I'm going to check and see if it looks like they're ready to move on. All right. Next is Asante Children's Theater. Our reader for that application is Erin Williams. Erin.
Thank you. Make sure I got my notes here. Yeah, I thought this organization is doing just really a wonderful job serving a diverse community and serving underprivileged communities, especially working with children, and the way that they have been working with topics that are very prescient right now, I think is really impressive. One of their a one-act play, it looks like was filmed and then shown on PBS, which I thought was also really lovely, and a great way to connect to communities that are not connected via the internet, which I think is an important thing. Yeah, I think so. I just made some notes that, the pros, they've really just did an outstanding job in a lot of the different directions that they went with their programming this year. The one thing that I kind of noted was that it was a little bit unclear in their merit statement how many of these programs would have gone on the way they did on a typical year. How much of this work was new kind of innovation work that was done because of COVID, or how much of it is just sort of their typical year that was just changed to meet the COVID requirements. So that was a little bit unclear to me. And another thing that I noted was that it seems like the class sizes of some of the student groups that they worked with were pretty small. They were, 7 or 10 students. And although those 7 or 10 students seem to have had an incredible opportunity to do some of the work that they've done, especially at Conda Prairie, I wondered if that maybe there was a way to be a little bit more inclusive or broad in including other groups of people or students that maybe exist outside of just those that are presenting or those that are acting and their families.
Great. Thank you, Erin. Additional new or differing comments on this application?
I definitely agree with Erin's comments. I definitely think operating during COVID is extraordinary, but I wasn't sure that they created any new programming, or was it just that they
I think she's
maybe
frozen.
Yeah.
to know what the surveys that they.
Christine, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, it just cut out for a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll just say what I said again. I
Please.
wasn't sure if what they provided was new programming in response to what they learned from their surveys and constituents, or if it was just programming that was being continued from what their normal programming is. And I thought that would have been good to know, in response to the surveys that they said that they did, whether they responded with modifying their program or creating new programs based on that information.
Additional comments? Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, I just have to echo what Christine was saying. It was difficult for me to find a appropriate score for where arts experience is built from a reflection on those relationships that they have developed during this time. But otherwise, a great contender and should be considered for merit because of the wonderful programming they are doing during this time.
Any additional comments? Yeah,
It's
Angie.
one of the things that I want to notate, that while many of our programming and opportunities were closed, they were able to adjust based on recommendations from our state and local health departments, and making sure that they were able to provide some in-person training and ongoing services and programming, but kept in mind that they had to keep those things in ratio compared to the size of the location that they were utilizing.
Thank you, Angie. Any other comments? If not, take a second, please, to update your scores in the online system as needed. And just a quick, maybe a quick reminder, the merit, the determination on merit award will be based on score, and it will be based on the availability of funding, like everything else. So really appreciate everyone's careful comments and your thoughts expressed in your scoring for these applicants. So thank you for that. Everybody ready to move on? It looks like folks are, yep. All right, then next is Big Car Collaborative, and Angie, you are our merit reader for that one.
Good afternoon again. For Big Car, what I liked is that they were able to adjust their programming and venues in a short term, knowing that around March is when the weather breaks for them. And so like First Friday art shows and all those things had to be put on hold. So they were able to do First Friday from home. And what I really think is key to note is that they didn't do this alone. They went and found collaborating partners in other art programmings like Garfield and WQRT and Wagon for Wonders, and were able to continue to provide art in locations that weren't traditional. And so, you know, the pop-up art show or the pop-up activities, while families were restricted in going out and only could be outside, for places that were usually indoor activities, they were able to make those adjustments pretty quickly and bring other partners along. So their relationship with Garfield Park Art Center, and using the Wagon for Wonders was just like two things that I thought were very innovative and very forward thinking, because you don't want to just think about how you survive on your own, but bringing other partners with you was really key, and about how we make sure that everyone has access to the arts.
Great, thank you, Angie. Additional comments from the panel?
I would definitely echo what Angie said. And also, I just wanted to bring forward again what Angie said about the radio station. I think that was really innovative because we're all online these days, but there are still people that they don't have the internet, or they're homebound. So I think bringing the radio back around full circle almost was a really great way to extend programming once again to those underserved people that don't have the internet and don't have those capabilities. So I really appreciated that.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Christine.
Yeah, I was really blown away by this application, especially the Wagon of Wonders. They went clear to Turkey Run, which Big Car is located in Garfield Park, which is about probably a 90-minute drive for them to get to Turkey Run. So it was really amazing to me about their reach and thought and care of serving the greater Indiana community. So really, really enjoyed and appreciated this application.
Great, thank you. All right, any other comments to be added? If not, thank you for the robust discussion. Take a second, if you would, to update scores if needed in the online system. Then we will, in just a second, move on to the next application. Looking to see if my next reviewer looks ready. She does. So we'll move on to Kids Dance Outreach Incorporated. Hannah, you are our merit reader for that one.
Hi. Yeah, so another very strong contender or application that I read, they displayed a considerable amount of commitment and innovation during the pandemic through targeted and innovative content towards various communities. Though now that I have sort of reread today, in their comments, I'm seeing a lot of "we will" plans. So I'm wondering what the group thinks about that, and to the point of me perhaps needing to readjust my scoring on what they have done prior to now. But otherwise, very strong.
Thanks, Hannah. So Hannah's asking for some panel wisdom here. How did other people interpret that, the merit narrative based on the criteria applicants were asked to address here in the merit section? Any thoughts?
I'm glad you note that, because I also really enjoyed this application, but looking back, I also see the kind of tendency to talk about the future. And it is hard to tell how many of these projects really served people during the pandemic or just were born from maybe some opportunities offered during the pandemic. So whether that exactly fits the criteria of the merit application is a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, they've been maintaining communications with their partner schools, but then concerning building meaningful relationships during this time, there's a lot of "we will" communication, which has made me sort of need to perhaps reassess through discussion of what the rest of the group has been thinking about this application.
I did think that they seemed to take the data that they had and adjust their programming. I definitely think that they met that consideration for the merit award. I did note the we will, and we are ready to step up and go when it's time. But I do think that they at least took that step and adjusted their programming based on data that they received from their constituents. And definitely, like you said, Hannah, a very strong application.
Okay, any additional comments about Kids Dance Outreach? All right, seeing none, take a second, please, and update your scores. Panelists, you've just provided us about the best illustration of why we do these panels live, and why we want you together to talk. It's great to see the dialogue and great to see the opportunity to share amongst each other related to your feedback on what you read. So thank you for providing that textbook illustration of why live panels work and why they're important. So thanks for that. Okay, next is Arts for Lawrence. Angie, you are our merit reader for that one.
So what I did appreciate about Arts for Learning is that they utilize their space, again, to collaborate with other artists. So although they could not have in-person shows, artists were allowed to use their space for rehearsals and just continue to keep the arts moving in the area. They talked about where they're located. They are not in the major area of downtown Indianapolis, and bringing arts to that area. And they talked about how that is one of the hardest hit areas in Indianapolis, and the importance of having arts available in the community where people can actually get to it without having to go downtown. And they were able to move swiftly to outdoor and virtual programming, and they didn't stop programming. So they used their Talent Tuesdays and took them to social media, which I thought was really cool. And again, the biggest thing for me is their collaboration and allowing others to use their space as allowed, and making sure that the arts don't die while we're in a pandemic.
Thank you, Angie. Other panelists, other comments?
One of the things I really liked about this organization was that they worked with other organizations in their community that served underserved populations. There were several that they mentioned in the application that worked with the Black community or the Hispanic community or whatever the community was. So they partnered with those organizations, and by not recreating the wheel, so to speak, they probably did better work because they used those resources of those organizations and they all work together to forward their mission. I thought that was really great.
Thank you, Christine. Other comments around Arts for Lawrence?
One thing I was kind of curious about, and maybe I just need to, do another deep dive. But it sounded like in some of their application that some of their buildings are closed, or their campus is closed or under construction since fall of 2019. So I was a little unclear as to what parts of their programming were already online and what maybe went online after the pandemic. So I did have a little bit of conflict picking numbers in that area, because I wasn't really sure, for the merit consideration during the pandemic, if these are, actual pivots to, accommodate their constituency, or if these are pivots that were already put in place because of their known building kind of upset that they were having. I'm not sure if anybody else noticed anything about that.
I did recall them talking about having some closed or under construction buildings, but I thought, and I was trying to access it quickly, but the application's still loading. That they talked about that they were just about to have a grand opening of their new space. And again, I could have read that because we all read so many applications. But I definitely see your point there.
I thought they said their opening was in 2023.
Okay.
Am I completely getting that wrong? I'm trying to look back.
Doesn't like that.
Well, they said that they were prepared to welcome back their audience in March. So they must have had some opening that was happening. I don't know what the extent was, but that might have been. And then they're talking again about their grand opening, which will be in the future. The other thing, and I'm glad that you mentioned the partnerships. I was also really curious about what these partnerships will look like. And I think these partnerships are really important, and I absolutely commend them for going into their community to find appropriate partnerships to work with different constituencies. But they don't really talk very much about what that programming looks like, or what that partnership looks like, if it's just using a facility in a neighborhood, or if it's actually coming together and planning programs. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more information about that.
Great discussion. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, if you would take a second and update your scores as appropriate in the online system for Arts for Lawrence. And we'll move on to our next applicant. All right, next applicant is Shelby County Players Incorporated, and Christine, that's you.
Okay, thank you. So this was another strong merit application. I think that one of the things we've heard from a few of these organizations is that during this time, especially with the ones that were closed or had furloughed staff, really took that opportunity to kind of do an internal check or recheck or reset with their processes and different things. And that's the case with this organization. Even though they were closed for a few months, they were not idle. They were definitely doing planning in the background. They have one big event that they plan for second graders, and they were able to get that event off the ground virtually. And that was a big accomplishment for them. They also learned a good lesson, and I think a lot of, especially arts organizations, are learning during this time that virtual programming can extend your reach and your serving of especially underserved populations, people that don't have cars and can't travel and those kind of things. So it's good that they have that realization that virtual can increase your audience and help you reach those people that you never thought you could, especially outside of Shelby County. They were reaching people outside of the state and things like that. I also like that this organization is making a formal effort to educate volunteers on diversity. They obviously made that a priority as well. And above all that, they also worked on their capital campaign during this time. They engaged with people in their community and found funds, significant funds, to go towards their goal. So even though they were closed for a portion of the time, they really made strides during that time.
Additional comments on Shelby County Players?
I think one of the things that was most impressive with me is that they were still able to function in a school system, given that school shut down on a dime's notice and had so many other things going on, that they were still willing to allow for a performance, an art performance, as well as get all the second graders who are struggling to get online present and able to attend. So I think that was one of the highlights of just seeing that we do not have to stop arts simply because there is a slowdown or a shutdown in our country.
Thank you, Angie. Other comments? All right, seeing none, take a second if you would and update your scores for Shelby County Players. We'll move on to our next applicant here in a sec. Okay, our next narrative applicant is the Storefront Theater of Indianapolis, and Aaron Williams, you are the merit reader for this one.
Knew I was going to do that. I wanted to do it the whole time. Go back to my notes here. I really appreciate this application because I can see that this very small organization is making such a concerted effort to be as equitable as possible, and that they've made some really interesting changes to their organization by kind of reflecting on that this year. So I can really appreciate that. Part of those plans are, their new patron entry plan, which I thought was really interesting. Again, hopefully it'll work well for them and be beneficial and actually be lucrative for them. It can be so hard to figure out ways to find ticketing. And so I can really understand how that was probably a hard decision to make. I also really appreciate that they were really committed to paying the artists that they work with in fair compensation, and that they seem to have tried to find new artists to work with to make sure that artists felt supported during the pandemic. And I found that I really appreciate that. I thought it was really a nice gesture, but also thoughtful for the industry. I think that their flash mob readings that they talked about during the voting season were probably the most interesting way to work with the community, engage with the community. Some of the other programming was a little bit more direct, where they had a program, and instead performing it live. They switched it to online, which again, was a very common practice this year, and it does have the tendency to get a great viewership. So I hope that that really helps them broaden their membership base and their viewer base. But I think that this particular project where they did the pop-up flash mob, like single actor pieces. I'm sorry, I'm not in theater, so I might butcher this for those theater people who are watching. But I think that that was probably the most creative and innovative way to work in the pandemic. I was a little unclear about how they were building their meaningful relationships with the community. They were generating some new art experiences, but they didn't talk very much about kind of how those experiences really went into the community and how they affected them. They also didn't talk very much about what neighborhoods they were working in, even though they said that, they were working outside of Broad Ripple, which I think is really great. Was it just the neighborhood next door, or was it really, moving out into a new area and getting a whole new audience? So that was the only area where I was looking for a little bit more information.
Great, thank you, Erin. Additional comments on this applicant? All right, seeing none, if you would take a moment and update your scores for Storefront Theater of Indianapolis.
How is the system working for you all now? Are you able to refresh and get it to pull up? I know it was going slowly and then maybe it glitched for a minute. Is it working now? Okay, good.
And let us know if we need to take a moment or two to let you go back to a previous application if you needed to update and you weren't able to get in. Is everyone feeling like their scores are reflecting their? Okay, good. All right. Then we won't need to take a moment and go back. All right, our next merit narrative review is Storytelling Arts of Indiana. And Hannah, you are merit reader for this one.
All right, so another very impressive merit consideration. I was particularly impressed by the variety of offerings that they presented during this time. Their ghost stories, moving from Crown Hill Cemetery to Tibbs Drive-In, was notable for me. And they just showed a variety of actions towards demonstrating their commitment, as well as innovation during this time. And I love their application.
Additional comments. Go on, jump in there, Christine.
Okay, sorry. I definitely agree with Hannah. I think, wow, 57, they put on 57 events. That's amazing. I think it's great. They also worked on diversity during this time, their diversity goals. So I think that's amazing as well. And they also adapted their programming to the needs and requests of their constituents. So another very, very strong application today.
Thanks, Christine. Other comments? Okay, hearing none, take a second if you would. Update your scores in the online system for Storytelling Arts. Let us know if the system is being buggy again, and we'll take a second, but like we're okay. Okay, next application, merit narrative review is Summer Stock Stage, Inc. And Angie, you are merit reader for this one.
Okay, so again, I just thought reading all the merit award consideration narratives was interesting in how swiftly, if you think about arts in the traditional sense, it is a performance in front of a group of people in a set place, and how quickly things changed. And for this group, they were able to do 6 Zoomicals. And so they actually had shut down and were prepared to wait out the pandemic, and heard from their constituents and their students that they really wanted to be together, and so decided to go ahead and do that. Not only did they do that, they joined in what was becoming popular, which was the watch parties, and had a watch party and presented their Zoomicals on the local PBS station. So, and they didn't do this alone. Again, they collaborated with other partners to make sure that as many artists that could work were able to work. And they thought, and I think it's important that we not think about just the audience, but also the performers. And so one of the performers stated they were so happy. They thanked the organization so much for the opportunity, more than anything else, because these days they were missing a sense of community. And tonight that was fulfilled. And that was the night that they showed the Zoomicals on the PBS station. And they also talked about how they worked to make sure that they were inclusive in their selection of individuals while they were doing auditions kind of virtually. And so everyone was given an opportunity to perform regardless of their previous experience. And I think that that's key because they also learned that as they work on their minority diversity and engaging other people, they learned that if they start with the youngest performers, they were able to keep them longer and increase that diversity and minority population by starting with young actors and getting them in front of others. So it was really enjoyable for me to think that, you know, as many times as I'm saying I'm sick of Zoom, to have a Zoomical available, come up with a new term and be able to still utilize and teach people how to audition and perform, even in a world that we have never seen before. So I thought it was a great narrative and application.
Thanks, Angie. Other comments? Additional, differing, new?
I would also say that they put forth a new program for their 2021 season, which was to give free workshops for underserved youth in hopes to garner more participants from those communities. So it wasn't that they just kept on doing what they were doing, they expanded their programming as well. So definitely that should be commended.
Thank you, Christine. Any additional comments? Good discussion. Okay, seeing none, please, if you would, finalize your scores for Summer Stock Stage. And now, drum roll, please, our last merit narrative application review for this panel is the Da Vinci Pursuit. Hannah, you are the merit reader for this application. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Hannah.
Sure. Hi. So this application for merit was, I found it difficult for me to analyze. So it'll be very interesting to hear what my fellow panelists have to say. They presented that they delivered arts experiences to Indiana during this pandemic time, but I would have loved to have been able to see a little bit more detail as to how exactly they did that. And then they discussed about how they are uniquely suited for bringing science education and culture enrichment closer to the public. And again, I would have really loved to get more detail on how exactly they do that. But overall, you can tell a deep sense of care and commitment towards what they do. But I would just love to know a little bit more as to how they do what they do. And I'll just be very interested to read or hear what everyone else had to say about them. This one was difficult for me to analyze.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Hannah. Comments? Thoughts? Oh, Christine, I think you're frozen. I think Christine may be frozen. Oh, there you are. Good. You're back.
Okay. Good intention behind it. And it was just not enough information to be able to make a recommendation.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Christine.
I agree. I think that they are very used to talking about their projects to kind of a larger audience who's familiar with their work. And so if you had a really concrete understanding of the types of projects that they did, I think this would be excellent, language to use to really, drive home the relationship that they have with the community and the way that they work. But because it is also very vague as to what exactly it is that they've done, I think just some really specific details would have been helpful in this application.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. If you would take a second, please, and update your scores for the Da Vinci Pursuit. Just checking in to make sure the online system is still behaving itself, and it looks like maybe it is. Good, yeah, great.
Right, can I say something real quick? This is Angie.
Yeah, sorry, Angie, jump in.
That's okay. That's okay. Although I did not see like concrete examples of what they did, I want to highlight that they were able to take something, again, that happens inside and put it in the community. When people were not traveling, were not going past their own neighborhoods, this is still innovative and opening it up to people who wouldn't see it. And a connection between the science and the arts, for me, is just phenomenal because I would never put science and arts together. And if you can get some kind of presentation that would make me understand science by watching a performance or looking at a museum without walls, I am definitely open to it. And I think it will, if we could get this in front of students in classrooms, I think this is another way that we could help transform arts in Indiana.
Angie, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the additional reflection there. That's great. Any other comments on that one, on Da Vinci Pursuit? Okay, seeing none, if you take a second, please, and update your scores in the online system. And with that, the conclusion, this concludes the Arts Organization Support Grant panel for this afternoon. Thanks to our panelists and thanks to IC staffers on the panel. Just as an FYI, applicants, you'll be notified of the status of your grant by email in late June, early July of this year. And if you have any additional questions about the status of your application or about the process, please contact Region 7's Program Manager, Stephanie Haynes. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for the panel, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.